You're watching Fox 17 News.
From the murder of a 15-year-old boy, an American dream wiped out, to a missing mother.
Tonight, Fox 17 News is giving you 30 minutes of some of the most baffling cold cases.
Fox 17 News obtained new interviews with the DeKalb County Sheriff and his chief investigator who handled the Lauren Agee death investigation.
20-year-old died at Centerville Lake. Dennis Ferrier with an exclusive Fox 17 News investigation.
Lauren Agee's family believes the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department did a terrible job investigating their daughter's death, that they rushed to call it an accident without a second thought. Now they were finally able to ask the lead investigator questions under oath. How did that go? See for yourself.
When Lauren Agee was found dead in Centerville Lake, the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department sent this man, Jeremy Taylor, to lead the investigation. After 2 months, Taylor finished his police report and determined Lauren Agee fell into Centerville Lake and either died from the fall or drowned. The report was just 3 paragraphs long. The family answered by suing her camping friends for wrongful death: Aaron Lilly, Brix Gambrell, Hannah Palmer, Christopher Stout. That lawsuit forced former DeKalb County Detective Jeremy Taylor to do something he didn't want to do: to walk the family through the investigation.
Now, did you ever listen to the 911 calls that were called in that initiated this case?
I didn't, no.
Okay, why not?
I just didn't.
Did you interview any of the people who had made those calls?
No, I did not.
Sitting here today, do you know when she was last seen alive?
No, I don't.
And there were houseboats, were there not, that were somewhat near this campsite that the individual's been at?
There was at the dock.
Yeah. Did you do anything to talk to them about what they may have seen the evening of Lauren's death?
No, I didn't.
Okay, why not?
I just didn't.
Did you ever look for blood on the rocks at the bottom beneath the campsite?
No, not specifically, no.
Now, if you later learned that Lauren had hemorrhaging within her throat that could be consistent with choking, would you have taken any additional steps to investigate that?
It's possible.
The family hired a hydrologist who says if Lauren fell from the campsite, it would be impossible for her to float against the current to the cove where she was found.
Did you do anything to investigate the way the current would have flowed around that outcropping where the campsite was?
No.
Now, you never got a dive person out to the scene that day, correct?
A dive person?
Yeah, underwater investigator.
No, sir, I didn't.
You understand there's sometimes lake cases where things are found in the water or they need to look for
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was never done in this case, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, why not?
I just didn't.
Taylor admitted under oath he had never worked a homicide, and even more eye-opening, he had 0 training in homicide investigation. He did not even consider collecting DNA.
Were you aware that one can collect evidence from fingernails?
Yes.
Okay. Did you do anything to do that in this case?
No.
Did you do any DNA swabs of fingernails?
No.
Okay.
He also admitted he didn't request a rape examination because Lauren was on her period. The family's private detective, Sheila Wysocki, finds all of this hard to believe.
It's outrageous in 2018 you don't do a rape kit because you think someone's on their period.
DeKalb County Sheriff Patrick Ray said he thought maybe there could have been more information in the investigation.
You testified that you believe he could have put more information.
Yep.
That's fair. Do you believe he should have put more information?
I don't know how to answer it without going back.
It's a yes or no.
He could have.
If you say could have, I'm going to keep asking.
Don't give me again.
I'm going to ask it again.
Sheriff Ray would not answer, but he was happy to criticize the media for investigating Lauren's death.
When you go out and slander my department about something, then I'm going to try to straighten it back up, because Fox 17 News kept running things that were making things appear one way, which was the wrong way.
Private Eye Sheila Wysocki says Sheriff Ray is worried about the wrong things.
I'm just trying to get the truth. So we have a difference of opinion. I'm not trying to cover myself. I'm trying to get to the truth of what happened to a 20-year-old girl on that night. He's worried about a political career.
Meanwhile, 3 years have passed. Sherry Smith spent all of the savings for Lauren's college and her wedding and some of her own retirement, yet she has never flinched.
That is how I am still loving her, is I am trying to find out what happened to her. And I owe her that. I mean, she was my life. She was my best friend. She was, at the time that she died, she was completely and totally straight A student in school. She had goals. She had a boyfriend. It was the happiest time of her life. And then she was dead the next day.
The family says they have a witness who told them what happened that night, but they don't know who to take it to. I'm Dennis Ferrier, Fox 17 News.
A teenage boy killed. The clues that could solve this cold case.
Sometimes when a murder goes unsolved, it tears a family apart.
As Fox 17 News' Dennis Ferrier shows us, that's what happened to the Drumrights after someone killed their sweet 15-year-old son.
Becky Drumright is so angry someone killed her boy, angry at law enforcement for not solving the case, and just plain angry that the murder led to divorce.
Tony Drumright had a terrible beginning. He wasn't loved as a baby. He was nearly killed.
Tony had been taken by his feet and slung up against the wall when he was a baby. He was totally paralyzed. And at 18 months old, he started to regain his functions. But he was blind in one eye.
Becky Drumright stepped in. She adopted Tony, got him fitted with a glass eye, and showered him with love. He wanted to be a computer programmer. He was a homebody, so it was no surprise on August 25th, 1999, he came straight home after school. But when Mom and Dad came home from work, they couldn't find him. But Dad noticed the family gun was missing.
And he said, "Oh my God."
Tony was missing too.
Then I heard Henry call my name in like a blood-curdling. I mean, I can't describe that, but I'll never forget the way he called for me.
His dad found him face down behind the house by the air conditioning unit with a bullet wound in the back of his head. Police believed he had killed himself, gun in the mouth, bullet out of the back of his head, suicide. But what no one saw this afternoon was this bullet hole in the closet door. The gun had been fired in the house. Was Tony in a fight with an intruder? No one wondered because no one knew. The family followed Tony to the hospital. When they got home, the Carroll County Sheriff had never even considered yellow tape or a crime scene. The assumption was suicide, but that was wrong, way wrong. The shot in the house and that bullet wound in the back of the head was an entrance wound. Tony was shot in the back of the head running for his life. And all of a sudden, here comes the sheriff with the crime tape.
He said, "Well, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news." And I was so pissed because he wasn't blurting out anything, so methodically speaking. And I said, "What?" "Well, the good news is he didn't do this to himself. The bad news is somebody did it to him."
But now there was no crime scene. Caring friends cleaned up everything up while the Drumrights were at the hospital. And the sheriff actually decided to let people believe it was suicide.
Their strategy was, let's just let it go. Let's just let it be quiet and we'll flush the people out to talk. It's so disgusting.
Angry already, a friend told Becky Drumright the murder weapon had been compromised.
That's why there are no fingerprints on the gun. Because Barney Fifes at the Sheriff's Department handled the damn gun.
4 years ago, new District Attorney Matt Stowe reopened the case. He exhumed the body to look for DNA evidence.
The exhumation, without getting into it in a lot of details, if it had solved the case, we'd be in court right now talking about it, so it hasn't solved it yet. It did provide us with some additional clues, but we're still chasing those down.
Can you imagine your 15-year-old child being murdered? Your homebody, quiet, good kid, never a whiff of trouble, taken from you out of the blue? I'll tell you this, it destroyed the Drumrights.
But it's been 20 years. It destroyed my family. I can tell you that.
Becky couldn't get past the murder. Her husband couldn't talk about it. She lost her marriage. She even lost her daughter for a decade.
I ended up putting myself in a mental institution because it just was more than I could take.
DA Matt Stowe hopes someone comes forward Did Tony's killer really keep quiet all these years? Someone must know who killed the little boy whose life began and ended so violently.
2 witnesses have come forward and named the killer, but as you know, there's a wide gap between knowing who did it and proving it. I'm Dennis Ferrier, Fox 17 News.
An American dream wiped out, the family forever changed by a brutal murder. They were a real American success story. Immigrants who came to this country with nothing and become a huge success.
Fox 17 News' Dennis Ferrier shows us all that came crashing down one night.
It's hard enough to lose the head of your family to murder. It is insufferable to see that crime go unpunished for a dozen years.
Thank you for your business.
La Hacienda Taqueria and Market was a huge gamble in 1992. An authentic Mexican restaurant and market here in Nashville, there was nothing like it. But what a hit. At a tortilla factory that supplies 7 states.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate your business.
And you understand why the Ceja family is so proud. They built this from nothing.
It's just a dream, American dream.
The market was run by Aureliano and his wife Teresa. They worked every night, chatted with customers, and closed. But on March 18, 2006, a couple lingered in the market. And then at 10, across the street in a closed car lot, that couple followed them home and knocked on their door. Unfortunately, Mr. Ceja cracked the door.
He came and he said, I want La Hacienda money. And my mom said, no, I don't have. Yes, where's the bag? Look, it's just groceries. But he kept on saying it's La Hacienda money. So he kept beating and beating and beating them.
Mr. Ceja was beaten to death. His wife, Teresa, was pistol whipped beyond recognition.
She prayed to God to give her strength to get up. She felt very swollen and bloody. She could barely see.
It was so hard for this big, close family. The Cejas have 8 children. Many worked right here at La Hacienda happily together. Even though Mrs. Ceja got a good look at the killer that night at Players Court, the case has remained cold for 12 long years. So much changed that night. The Cejas were on the eve of their 50th wedding anniversary. The celebration turned into a funeral that still lingers, solemn, cold, lonely.
Since that day, she doesn't have no happiness. She doesn't have no peace. She was always with my father. They were one piece together, always together. She doesn't know how to drive. She doesn't know how to live without him. They stole everything from her.
We have our husbands, our family, our kids. But when I'm thinking in truth, she does not have anything. And that's what it breaks my heart to see lonely when I see them all the time together. Everywhere they go, they were like a beautiful couple.
Metro Police have made progress on the case, in many ways because of the diligence of Lillian, who in her always polite way has kept asking for updates. She believes it will be solved, as she believes her father still watches over La Hacienda Market and Restaurant.
This is who we are, like what you see around us. This is my father. We feel my father isn't here. Every time we are here, we feel the energy.
Mr. Ceja was always there for his kids. He would always say, don't get down, my beautiful daughters. Today's a new chapter in your life. The family still waits for that chapter titled Justice. I'm Dennis Ferrier, Fox 17 News.
It's the oldest reopened cold case in the state of Tennessee, the nearly 80-year-old murder of Elbert Williams.
So what did this Brownsville man do to get kidnapped and murdered? As Fox 17 News' Dennis Ferrier shows us, he wanted to vote.
There was a very new organization in 1939. 53 black people in Haywood County, Tennessee joined this organization. 1 year later, it was gone. Not just the organization, but the people fleeing in terror. Elbert Williams did not make it out, the first known member of the NAACP to be murdered.
Look at them, so hopeful. Business owners, teachers, college grads, farmers. They are posing as members of the first rural NAACP in Tennessee. Haywood County was 51% black, but completely run by white people. The idea was to gain a voice.
Black people wanted to vote. That's what was going on.
The president of the NAACP, Ollie Bond, and his wife were the first targets, tipped off at the last minute.
You got to get Ollie out of town. They're going to kill him tonight. He packed a suitcase and left that day, and that night his house burned to the ground.
Elisha Davis was escorted by 2 uniformed police officers to the Hatchie River bottom. Surrounded by a mob, he was told, "Leave tonight or die." He left. The plan was working.
And that was, we will destroy this organization by kidnapping its leaders, running them out of the county, and leaderless, it'll just die on the vine.
But this man, Elbert Williams, refused to leave. He wanted to vote. And as other members left Brownsville in fear, Elbert promised to register black people to vote. That's when the sheriff, Tip Hunter, and another uniformed officer, Charles Reed, came to Elbert's home and took him to jail in downtown Brownsville. He didn't even have shoes or a shirt. The next day, his wife came by the jail.
So she says, "I'm Miss Williams. My husband Elbert's in jail, and I want to give him these clothes." And Charles Reed said to her, she says, "I don't know Elbert Williams. He hasn't been here tonight."
3 days later, he is pulled out of the Hatchie River. His wife says he had 2 bullet holes in his chest. That was the last straw. The NAACP dissolved, people fled, and the fertile ground of the Haywood County civil rights movement withered. It would be 20 years before people even talked about civil rights again. The state and federal investigation was a joke. The FBI's prime suspect, you can see here, Haywood County Sheriff Tip Hunter, who was present at all of the FBI interviews with black residents. Talk about hopeless.
The law offered no protection. It was the law that was the greatest threat.
If you're wondering why Jim Emerson knows so much about this subject, he has spent his entire retirement dedicated to finding out who killed Elbert Williams. More than 6 years of investigation.
Here was a man murdered, not because he did something wrong, because he wanted to vote. That is highly offensive to me.
He's not alone. District Attorney Gary Brown has reopened the case. A UT forensic team, along with Geophysics International, is looking for Elbert Williams' unmarked grave in the vast African-American cemetery just out of town. Elbert Williams was disposed of with such disrespect as if it would never matter.
It matters for justice and for truth.
If you're wondering what could the grave possibly reveal, they're hoping to match bullets found in the grave to the sidearm of the sheriff or one of the deputies. I'm Dennis Ferrier, Fox 17 News.
Dennis, thank you. A mother simply vanishes. One daughter's mission for justice.
Can you imagine going to the TBI for protection and instead you disappear off the face of the earth?
Fox 17 News' Dennis Ferrier has exclusive insight into a disturbing cold case.
Christy Bradford lives in a secret location. Nothing she owns is in her name, and she always carries a gun, all because of what happened to her when she was 15 years old at Camden's most popular restaurant.
This is the Country and Western Restaurant in Camden. 26 years ago, the TBI and the local sheriff were sitting at this table with Sheila Bradford and her 15-year-old daughter, Christy. Sheila Bradford said she had information about a brutal double murder. She had broken up with her boyfriend, J.C. Bruce, a convicted rapist and kidnapper, and she wanted protection in exchange for information.
She said, "Can you help me? Can you protect me?" And they said, "You don't know enough for us to be able to help you." And then the explosion happened, which my mother thought was a gunshot, and she grabbed me and threw me to the floor. And then Mama just grabbed me and said, "He knows we're here, we have to leave."
The explosion was in a building out back. It was engulfed in flames. That was September 21st, 1992. Sheila Bradford hid that night. The next day she went back to her home on Little Jim Road. She wanted to pick up some clothes before going back into hiding. She was drying some socks. It was 10:30 a.m. when she stopped answering the phone.
She just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yes.
I mean, there was no trace, nothing.
Nothing. Her car was sitting in the driveway. Just she was missing.
Were her clothes still in the dryer?
Yes.
The next day, Christy called the police and said, "My mother's missing. We're sure she was taken because of the meeting at Country and Western." But for some reason, law enforcement decided there was no foul play. In fact, they told Christy she couldn't even file a missing persons report.
She didn't even have shoes on.
Certainly, if a reasonable person could connect her disappearance with the meeting with law enforcement, why couldn't law enforcement?
Who just goes missing off the face of the earth without a trace? No trace. Who does that? How does that happen? And for no one to do anything.
By the way, remember that murder she had information about? It was a brutal double murder. Danny Vine and Della Thornton. Brothers Gary Bruce, Robert Bruce, and Jerry Bruce were all convicted of the murder. Sheila's boyfriend, J.C. Bruce, was the only brother not charged in those murders. Does it seem to you like a bad idea to meet a potential murder informant who's scared witless asking for protection at the most popular restaurant in the county? That was a terrible idea. And that's not just us talking. Law enforcement in this district say it taught them to never do that again.
Today, in part because of the Sheila Bradford case, we do things a lot differently in the way we meet with witnesses and things like that. I think the way the disappearance happened is folks didn't realize how sophisticated crime can be in a rural area.
New DA Matt Stowe has reopened the Sheila Bradford case, and he says people should no longer fear the Bruce family. The three murderers are still in prison serving life without parole.
This crime family had people scared to death, and as a result of the fact that most of them are in prison, people may feel comfortable coming forward now when they would not have felt comfortable coming forward before.
Christy Bradford ended up working in law enforcement. She's a dispatcher at the Carroll County Sheriff's Department. She loves getting people help, even though no one helped her.
I want answers. I want to know that justice is served for her. You know, me and my brothers were young. We were teenagers at the time. We couldn't stand up for her. We couldn't do anything. Where was anybody 26 years ago? Just anybody.
Christy says the TBI has never updated her. And J.C. Bruce, he's still around. He's a free man. I'm Dennis Ferrier, Fox 17 News.
Dennis, thank you. I want to thank all of you for watching Fox 17 News.
We do appreciate it, and for making many of our newscasts the fastest growing source of local news.